G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and today we're going to actually talk about Angron, and we're going to talk about the Predator tank for Horus Heresy as well while we're at it. So, Angron, where to begin? Well, by now, you hopefully would have seen the meme video I put up, because, well, the model has a tactical rock, which is okay, it's fine. It's just one of those funny things where it's like, he doesn't need a tactical rock to stand out as the general. We're in this sort of funny, place with these demons where we've had so many Khorne demons over the years, and there's so many different bloodthirsters especially. It's very hard to make Angron look any different than what's come before, because they're basically all just another play on the theme of big red demon with wings, the sort of classic satanic look. And, you know, that said, I really like the model a lot. Actually, I don't know what weapons he's using. It looks kind of like Gorefather, but I was kind of hoping he'd use something like I think it was Brazen Tooth or something like that. He had like this big, giant two-hander available to him at one point. It would have been pretty cool to see that weapon in there, but guess that was asking for too much. Then we compare, of course, with his 30k model, and they're very much unalike. I don't know how I feel about that. I know I really hate it with Magnus, and it's probably the thing I dislike most about Mortarion. So why don't we go through all of these different demon Primarchs today? Have a quick chat about them. So there's little things that I find as quirks, okay? The little like nitpicks I have with these models, which I think are really good. And I like to point out the nitpicks just because it goes back to like basic design and continuity and tying things in together, and what I personally have a taste for. Everyone is going to have tastes that vary and are different. So Angron here, for example, he has these weird cables all over him. I'll try and zoom right in on them. Like on the back of the vambrace of the arm. And you can see those cables. They've got like that weird, like it's a tube that's damaged. He's got one coming out the center of his forehead, one of the butcher's nails, and it's like it's a rubber tube with a conduit inside of it. They love doing this on Chaos models, and I think it looks terrible. I've never liked it on any models, but they keep doing it. Again, it's the little bit that I don't like on a model I otherwise do love. He's got a socket of some kind for like a black carapace or something built into his wing. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a black carapace built into his wing. It's just little things like that. But really the big thing that gets me is there is nothing here that ties it very well into its 30k model. And people immediately go, well, Macca, he has a World Eater's symbol on him. Yeah, okay. But let's compare the pair. Angron in 30k in the Armour of Mars. He has the lightning bolt motif with the World Eater's iconography on the shoulder pad. And the shoulder pad is this very, very angular, very pointed shoulder pad, very aggressive, which kind of suits his look. And I like it a lot. Like the pad actually comes to a point below the planet or the world that's being eaten, and has the little lightning bolts coming out the side of the world. Very nice. But on this model, it's just like a generic chaosy, crumpled up, brazen shoulder pad. It doesn't have that same triangular, angular feel to it. And the same goes with the World Eater symbol on the back of him. It's just a traditional sort of trophy rack, really. It doesn't look like in 30k where it's sort of like the cowling behind his head. Maybe you could say like an Iron Halo type thing with the Aquillas. Even the armor, like Angron has basically none of the armor that he has in 30k, and this is a problem we see as well with Magnus and his Demon Primarch, and Mortarion, his Demon Primarch. The models are not showing me a corrupted version of their 30k model, they're just showing me a Chaos model. I know it's not a huge distinction, but bear with me. Something I find interesting about Chaos, and this is personal taste, okay? It's not like an objective reality or anything like that. But when I look at these models, I think, you know, I can see the genesis. That model used to be this model. That sort of thought. I don't have that with the 30k Demon Primarchs as they've been modelled. It's not that they're terrible models or bad models, with the exception of Magnus's arm, which we'll get to. It's that they just don't represent for me the Primarch that has fallen. They're too different. If this Angron model had, the wrists, doesn't need to be covered in corn emblems. If it was more of like just he had the gladiator style, sort of like that Lorica segmentada style armor plate that harkens back to the gladiator look, and even down to the way the little ends of the straps on the armor, like little, almost like aquillas instead of just being spikes, or the way his greaves, the little armor plates on his shins have little lightning bolts of unification, and the World Eater's knee icon. None of those details are in this model. He's just wearing generic Chaosy armor. And that's a shame for me because it's losing something there. It doesn't say this was Angron. This model almost could be, and again, it's a great model. I just want to reiterate that because what that I like, and I'll talk about it. This model, though, could just be any old Khorne model for what it's worth. If it wasn't for that World Eater's symbol on the shoulder pad and the one above on that trophy rack, this is just a generic Demon Prince. That's the only way you could look at it. So I don't like it in that regard. Now, things I do like. I love the chain axe. The chain axe looks fantastic. It is the right level of gold trim and such on there. It's not stupidly over the top. The wings look nice, although they do have a bajillion knuckles to them. I think that gives you some great painting opportunities. I also really like the face, believe it or not. A lot of people are going to hate the face, but it does remind me of the old Demon Angron artwork, and I appreciate that. It is harking back to something. I don't care for the tactical rock, but I like the pose overall standing up onto the rock. And although people think he looks very fat and chunky in this, I'm willing to bet that in person, when you actually have this in the flesh and can see this thing from 3 different angles, he's going to look completely different. He's going to look like he's actually very aggressive and lunging and running towards the enemy. So a really good model in that regard. And the sword. I really like the sword and the way it's sort of like that, kind of like the giant version of the Bloodletter's sword with the lava or molten steel bubbling out the center of it. That's really cool and very ornate. I'd love to see separate weapon options. Like I said, I'd love to see the giant double-headed chain axe option. I doubt we'll get it, but it'd be really cool if we did. And even if we don't, it doesn't make the model worse for it. And one little other nitpick I actually see on it, you can see right on the van braces and above his head, there's just like random teeth. He's got one on the Khorne symbol on his wrist guard, on his gauntlet, his van brace. It's just like a random black tooth there, and same above his head. There's like just a couple of random, pointless mutation is something that really irks me because it takes away from the design continuity of Chaos. It's just like, Khorne doesn't do random bullshit mutation, okay? Tzeentch would do that. Khorne wouldn't. Khorne, his Demon Prince, especially when they're mutating, like, what they are is what they will themselves to be in a way. Why would they do that? It makes no sense. And it just makes the model worse for having it. So, Angron's one of my favourite 30k Primarchs, even though he was the first Primarch we got, and, there's issues that come with that, he's still a favourite of mine. And I think, out of all the DM Primarchs so far, this is the best effort at converting a 30k Primarch into a 40k one. Better than what they did with Guilliman, who's just atrocious on every level, and better than Magnus and Mortarion, which I think we'll do Mortarion next, actually. So Mortarion is not a terrible model. I've spoken about it at length in the past. I don't like how the cloak is full of like wispy, smoky stuff, and it's kind of silly, but the one thing that's always stood out to me as bad about this model, again, from that design continuity perspective, is that this model is nothing like this model. 30k's Mortarion has all this brass pipework and such on the back of him, and he's wearing clearly Terminator armor. Whereas 40k's Mortarion, he's lost all that cool brass pipework. He does have brass stuff up on the back, but he's got those weird, like, upside down funnel horn coral reef things on his back billowing. So it just looks, they're just awful, and they're awful on every Nurgle model they're on. I have no idea why Games Workshop likes them, but they're terrible. My taste, personally. And he's in Mark III armor, which... that's not his armor. His armor in 30k was clearly this really nice looking Terminator armor. So, stylistically, it doesn't scream same guy to me. You can't use a scythe, for example, as saying, oh, well, they both got scythes. Scythes are so common in the Death Guard in 40k and 30k. It's not enough to say. I feel like you should be able to put a Demon Primarch down next to the non-demonic version and clearly associate and go, oh, that guy has become that guy. I get it. And you can't do that with these. But otherwise, if you took Mortarian's model as its own separate thing, apart from the silly smoke horns on the back, it's a lovely model. It's a good-looking model. So it's just one of those funny things where the thing that gets me is just that design continuity. And then, of course, Magnus. Magnus has an awesome 30k model, very Egyptian, very space wizard, and has, these fantastic details. The way he's got the cloak with the little peacock's feathers, and all the Egyptian symbology on him, the little placards and cartouches, and sun motifs on the armor. And then you get to 40k Magnus, and it's just this bland, lazy miniature where what armor plates he has are almost entirely just swirls of random crap and birds' heads. It was just what screams Zench? I don't know, birds, Zench symbols? Well, just put them on his armor. It was just the laziest of the Demon Primarchs. And even he's got that stupid Quagmire's when he discovers internet porn wanking arm. It's just so bad. He's got this giant arm, and the sculptors try to explain it away as, oh, well, your arm was broken in the fight with Lehman Russ, so he had to repair it with bionics. It's like, he's a demon. He's a Primarch. I can mend a broken arm. I'm pretty sure Primarch's physiology can also mend a broken bone. He also has biomancy. He can magic his arm back together. Makes no sense. He just has this horrible, giant, four-fingered arm that's never been shown in any of his artwork, and it just ruins what is otherwise an okay model. And I say an okay model because this is not a great model even then. His head is way too tiny in comparison to all of his limbs. I think they did that to try and balance out the size of his head once they include the hair and the horns. But it can be done properly by better and more talented sculptors, as you can see with Magnus here. Blowing up this model and then corrupting it would have been a far better thing to do, but of course that's not what they did. They did this piece of crap. And that's all I've got to say on that. But yeah, Angron, awesome. Moving on, Predators. Let's talk about the Predator. I am very happy to see this in plastic for a start. I am not so happy with the 4 weapon options. Let's explain, because people are going to get immediately defensive. There are 9 main guns available to this tank, essentially, and they've chosen to put 4 in this kit. The other 5 are either going to be Forge World exclusive, or they're going to be sold separately later in a different type of Predator kit. Fine. Too much effort, I guess, to ask for that. But in the weapons they included the Gravis las cannon. It's a twin-linked las cannon in 30k, and this goes against years of established fluff. I mean, we're talking 30 years of established fluff. You can go back to the old White Dwarf articles talking about it. And I'll read it out to you so you know what it is. The records of the Liber Amorum show that the Predator Annihilator was first used by the Space Wolves during the Scarith Crusade, near the fringes of the Eye of Terror in the 36th millennium. During the Crusade, a Space Wolves great company was surrounded on all sides by Scarith, heretics, and rebels, including the combined armour of several traitor legions. The Space Wolves are renowned for their ingenuity and refusal to accept defeat, even in seemingly impossible situations. The Iron Priests of the Great Company prayed to their Primarch and were granted the vision. After consulting every portent and casting the runes, they saw that the signs were favourable and began the process of modifying their Predators. Using the Long Fang's las cannons, they created the very first Predator Annihilators, and used them to break their enemy's siege and cut massive swaths through the traitors' armoured units and dreadnoughts. After this impressive display, the Adeptus Mechanicus began a 200-year-long investigation into the Predator Annihilator and eventually gave the vehicle the Machine God's blessing, although by this time the Space Wolves had already been using the Predator Annihilator for over 190 standard years. So, is it the end of the world that we have a twin las cannon on it? No. Let's get that out of the way straight off the bat. Yep, there's lots of other vehicles in 30k that have las cannons and las cannon turrets, so it's not a big stretch of the imagination to say that it's on this particular tank. Of course, the argument can also be made that in-universe, hey, if all those other vehicles have this sort of weapon, of course this doesn't have that. It's got its own different range of weapons that it uses instead in 30k. It makes perfect sense. Why is it on there then? They put it on there, and this is just my opinion, because they wanted to sell this model to 40k players as well as 30k players, and the best way for them to do it, they decided, was to slap on the las cannon because it's used in 40k and then just say, fuck it, we'll use the same weapon in 30k and the players can just suck it up. And I don't like that. And I don't like it just for the simple fact that it's further diluting the lore. And a lot of people say, oh, it's nothing, don't worry. It is a nothing. Let's get that straight. It is a nothing problem. But it's every little bite that gets taken out of the lore like this that slowly adds up, okay? You're taking hundreds of little bites of the lore all the time, and eventually it devalues it, and it devalues the IP. Because eventually the lore becomes meaningless because it's just ever shifting. And that's my fear at the end of what lies at the end of this road, and why I don't want to see it happening. But, of course, opinions will vary on that, and that's, totally cool. But that's my problem with it. You have here an awesome looking kit. They chose to include a weapon that, entirely for marketing reasons, okay? You know it, I know it. They did it because they're like, oh, hey, 30k players might be confused. We put a gun in, they can't use it in 30k because we're putting the gun in there for 40k players. Yeah, not a great marketing strategy, but apparently people are cool with it, so it's going to pay off well for the company, of course, which is a shame because, yeah, it's just further pissing on the ashes of the Heresy's lore. And I don't like that. I really don't like that. But, some people are fine with it. And as I say, you do you guys. But yeah, overall, we didn't need the weapon option either in 30k. It's got so many other cool options like, neutron lasers and flamestorm cannons and magna melters and all this cool stuff. And just slapping a Gravis weapon on. I don't like the word Gravis either. I don't like it on armor in 40k. I can tolerate it on armor in 40k because it's their thing, but porting that name over to describe twin-linked weapons that aren't twin-linked but just fire 2 shots is silly. They could have gone with a better name, something that actually expressed what it is. Like dual las cannon instead of twin-linked las cannon or something. I don't know. But yeah, silly name. This sounds horrible. Let's just say it's a nice-looking vehicle. It's a nice-looking tank. It's a cool tank. I'm glad that they've bought it out in plastic. I just think that the amount of them that the average player is going to need to buy, they probably need to make them pretty cheap for it to be viable. For players financially, I mean like $50 Australian cheap. They won't. It'll be like probably, what's the Rhino? What's the Rhino currently for 30k? That'll tell me what this is going to cost. The Rhino in 30k is 78 Australian. Fucking Jesus. 85, probably. 85 to 88, something in that range. Because you're taking the entire Rhino tank and then you're adding the extra sprue in for the turret. And that's all it'll be. It'll be one sprue. Yeah, that's going to... Yeah, I'd say probably $7 to $10 minimum for that sprue. I wouldn't be surprised if the tank's close on cracking 100. I mean, the Kratos is 2 Rhinos in size and it's 210. Yeah, I don't like it. I mean, I love the vehicle. I think that's a big part of the problem here, right? all of us who are playing this game, or trying to get more people playing this game, looking at it going, oh, this is awesome, but Heresy requires a lot of units, and these units are very expensive, which makes the initial price and buy-in point really difficult. And of course, you don't want to be beholden to going to Forge World to buy all the upgrades and that for these tanks to play all the different variants, because that means you're going to be, that's going to add up really fast. So, yeah, let's hope the price is low, but I don't see them being it's going to be at least $10 more than a Rhino. I wouldn't be surprised if it was $20 more, close on Australian, $100. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for one tank. Fun fact, when I started this game, it was $35 for a Rhino tank, the Mark II, and it was $30 for the original Rhino. And what happened was, it was pretty justified at the time. They just went, look at the size difference between the two. $5 more makes sense. The Predators back in those days, and Razorbacks, they were metal turrets, white metal upgrades. So was the Whirlwind and Vindicator. They were all white metal upgrades to the basic Predator chassis. Rhino chassis. And it took, I'm going to say 2 or 3 years from when they first put out the Mark II Rhino till they went to the plastic Rhino that everyone would know from 40k today. It was about 2003 that happened. It was around 2000-ish when the Rhino came out. I think it was about 99 when the Land Raider came out. So all those models obviously showing a bit of their age, because it's been 20 years, since the last got rejigged, and here we're getting them rejigged now, which is cool to see. And I mean, we know that the Land Raider is coming. It's the same sprues that are in the Spartan box, but they change out the Spartan hull sprue for a Land Raider hull sprue. Use the same tracks, the same sides and everything. It's fascinating how they've done the mold, and a very actually smart way of doing the job, to be honest. So they've done that for the Land Raider, and of course the Sicaran in plastic is coming, the Leviathan in plastic is coming. I'm curious what happens with the other tanks though, because Vindicators, I think Vindicator and Vindicator Laser Destroyer is coming in plastic. That is my prediction. And I say that because it is not in Legends, it's in the main book. Whereas all the stuff in Legends was like the Legion Whirlwind, the Medusa, the Basilisk. If they're in Legends, that's where models go to die. So I think they're not getting plastic. I think they're going to stay either Forge World exclusive, or they're just going to be slowly phased out in a last chance to buy type thing in 2 or 3 years' time. Come back to this episode and tell me whether I was right or wrong in 3 years on these opinions. So, yeah. Still, nice looking model, and this will have, hopefully it includes, although they haven't shown it. I was actually just thinking to myself, they haven't actually shown that this has the Tank Commander sprue in it that came with the Rhinos and the Spartan. Because this has no pintle weapons on there, it has no crew commander on there, it doesn't have the smoke launchers off there. So it has none of the parts, I think, that are on that sprue. That's very interesting. So this might be one sprue shorter than the Rhino as a way of keeping the price down on the weapon turret options. Obviously, like the Kratos, this is one tank with sharing the same turret, and it just changes the sort of stowage box behind the commander's cupola at the back of the turret. That obviously you can change out the different options, and of course change the main gun. Looks like the las cannons and the Volkite share the same sort of housing for at the mantlet. That's that piece of armor on the turret, where the piece of armor that surrounds the weapon, okay, is the mantlet. Looks like the mantlet is the same on the Volkite and the las cannon, and different on the graviton cannon, and different again on the autocannon. So you might have to magnetize the Volkite and the Gravis las cannon shot. You might have to magnetize those two, and then also magnetize the mantlet itself to give you the other two weapon options. That's going to be a bit of a pain in the butt, but yeah, apart from that, looks alright. So yeah, again, just disappointed that they went for the twin las cannon 30k. It's 20-year-old, well and truly established fluff, and just saying, fluff changes all the time is not a good enough excuse, guys. Don't That's all it is. It's an excuse. Don't make excuses, okay? It's being done for money, not to make your game better. Okay, just keep that in the back of your mind. Be a little bit cynical about it. It doesn't hurt to be a little bit cynical. It's just watering down the IP, and it's little bites here and there that eventually will add up. Okay? On its own, it's a non-issue. Completely acknowledge it's a non-issue. But take a few hundred of those bites out of the fluff, and all of a sudden you've got a radically different system. And remember, despite what people like to say to argue their point, I mean, we've categorically proved in videos in the past, the law was been remarkably stable since the mid-90s until basically 8th edition 40k. The 40k and 30k law was incredibly stable. What really changed things up was obviously the Primarchs series, or the Horus Heresy series of novels, I should say, and obviously 8th edition 40k, and the quest for more sales. Those are the things that have really changed up the universe and changed the background. And the thing with background is, again, it's like Lord of the Rings. If you go back and you change up the fluff so that, events play out differently afterwards, is it okay because it's a minor change? Probably not. So why is it okay here? Anyway, Mac with the Outer Circle, I'll leave you with that parting thought. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all possibly on a live stream tonight with Kat. We'll see how we go. See you next time.